On behalf of myself and our staff, I want to welcome each of you today to the Bryan Museum. You're about to be exposed to the greatest events in world history, the settlement of the American West. The goal of this museum is to demonstrate to all of you the wonder of that event, because it is living proof that history is not boring, as many suggest, but at its core is high adventure. The West was home to endless miles of long and short grass prairies, punctuated by some of the most majestic mountains in the world. And it contains 5 distinct desert environments. It was a sanctuary to a vast display of wildlife. The first people to make their presence known on this landscape likely began arriving more than 14,000 years ago from points around the globe, and they spawned numerous distinct cultures and nations across the continent. The impressions of these earliest people on the land were light, but they left us some remarkable artwork, tools, and clothing that help define their unique symphony with both land and nature. Modern American settlement of the West began with much later arrivals. The first were Spaniards, cast ashore on Galveston Island. The only 4 survivors, led by Cabeza de Vaca, finally made their way to Mexico City, where they told stories of cities of gold and land rich in resources. For the next 300 years, the Spanish, contested only and briefly by the French under the leadership of La Salle, began their effort at exploration and conquest of the vast and wild West. They left an indelible historical impression upon the land and its inhabitants. Many rivers, towns, geologic, and geographical structures bear Spanish names. Our legal system felt Spanish influence, as did foundational businesses like ranching and agriculture. They left permanent monuments, the beautiful missions from Texas to California, as testimony to Catholic priests' efforts to Christianize a native population. In many ways, we are just as influenced by Spanish Catholic heritage as we are by Anglo-Protestant. Since the West's mostly Spanish beginnings, the kaleidoscope of unique history that was ordained on that remarkable landscape is like none other in all human times. It was the site of some of the world's most historic battles: the Alamo, Goliad, San Jacinto, called one of the 16 most decisive battles in all world history; the Battle of Resaca de la Palma, the first battle of the Mexican-American War, and the Battle of Sabine Pass, and the last battle of the Civil War, Palmetto Hill. The West fostered a separate nation, the Republic of Texas. It was home on its western limits to the gold rush that sent thousands sprinting to the west seeking fortune and fame. It was a training ground for the most famous cavalry unit in United States history, the 2nd United States Cavalry, stationed at forts across the West by the head of the Department of War, Jefferson Davis, to defend against the Plains Indians, especially the world's greatest light cavalry, the Comanche Indians, who stood for 70 years as an effective barrier to southern migration. During the Civil War, Texas was the only state never to be successfully occupied by the North. The last of the Indian Wars occurred in the West against the Lipan and Mescalero Apache under Red Shirt and Victoria. Chasing them were the Buffalo Soldiers of the 9th and 10th Cavalry, the most decorated fighting unit in United States history. The West was home to the cattle drive. From 1866 to 1888, more than 20 million longhorn steers were driven from deep South Texas to markets north and east, to infamous places like Dodge City, Kansas, and Ogallala, Nebraska. There is no historical event that matches the cattle drive and the pioneer, hero of that endeavor, the cowboy. The West also sponsored some notorious and infamous bad characters, such as Sam Bass, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, the Dalton Gang, and John Wesley Hardin. They were feudists, bank and train robbers, and cattle rustlers, and they were chased by lawmen of equal repute, such as Wyatt Earp, Jeff Milton, John B. Armstrong, and Major John B. Jones. The latter two served with many others in the famous and irrepressible law enforcement unit, the Texas Rangers. In 1900, a storm brought to Galveston the greatest natural disaster in United States history. And in 1901, the ground shook as a well blew in named Spindletop that projected America into the position of the world's largest oil producer and marked the beginnings of the modern oil industry. In 1910, the Mexican Revolution erupted and washed across the Rio Grande into the West. The end of that bloody event also marked the end of the settlement of the West. The likes of that landscape and the people, heroes both visible and invisible, we will never see again. But in this museum, you will see evidence of the incredible events produced here, and it is our hope that it will be a source of endless inspiration for all of you who visit us today. And thank you for your participation.